What it do, YouTube? It has been a fat minute since I have released a new podcast, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I've been pretty busy, working pretty hard on, of course, my career and just stacking my bread up, making some money. And then also on my off time, not gonna lie, I've been a little, I wouldn't say unmotivated, but I've had to find a reason to come back and do this podcast and something that I can actually talk about and something that I haven't been repeating on my previous podcast. So, usually I have my journal, but I kind of wrote on my little paper because I couldn't freaking find my journal. I'm going to make this another Versus podcast. So before we get started, please go and like this video, subscribe to my channel, please, because it doesn't cost you a thing. Costs you nothing, but it helps me out. Please go look at that Perks Corner for those watching on TikTok live. Go subscribe to that. Yes, I am filming my YouTube podcast. So let's without too much more introduction, let's get it started. So I've been running to a lot of topics recently in the last few weeks. A lot of topics about relationships, a lot of topics about men. And I'm going to address a little bit of both in this podcast. This is my Versus podcast, so I'm going to be comparing and contrasting a lot of aspects of both sides. I'm going to start off with the masculinity thing. So one thing I want to talk about is masculinity versus toxic masculinity. We have come to a point in society where things have to be redefined, have to be reevaluated. Hi, Yamcha is cool. I don't know if I agree with that username, but I'm going to reserve that for some other judgment. But we've come to a point in society where we have to redefine a lot of things. I'm not going to get into too deep into it with the whole masculine, feminine, women versus men thing. But one of the biggest things, damn, yeah, I know. Yamcha's been done pretty dirty through the series of Dragon Ball, so it's kind of hard not to think that he's anything other than cool. But we have to redefine a lot of things. And one of the things I've noticed is that people are having a big debate or not agreeing on what exactly is toxic masculinity. What is masculinity? What is the toxic version of it, and what actions or mindset defines whether it is toxic or whether it is proper? WSG, I was good. Is that like an acronym? Or yeah, I'm lost. That's a new one to me. But it has to be redefined because a lot of people are confusing, or I wouldn't say confusing. I think that the area is too gray right now to really figure out what exactly is regular masculinity, what exactly is toxic. And then also on a completely separate note that I could make a whole nother video about, I'm not gonna lie, the feminism movement also has added to the need for a redefinition of what exactly is toxic and what is actually proper masculinity. Now, I usually do my bullet points on a journal, but like I said, I can't find my journal, so I have it on this piece of paper. The one thing I want to dive into first is the toxic versus normal masculinity in treating significant others. Now, this is the first one I wanted to get into because this is the one that's had the biggest change over the years, from when I was a kid and from who I am now as an adult, and from seeing how people act and interact in said relationships. So there used to be a certain, I should say, dynamic. There used to be a certain mechanism of how men moved in relationships, and there also used to be a certain dynamic and mechanism how women moved in relationships. And my thing is, in this generation, in 2023, it is so difficult to be able to express your boundaries, to express your values, and to express certain things about how you move in a relationship without being ridiculed by someone else. I'm not going to lie. unless you're a man who is completely willing to give his utmost control, utmost respect, and utmost authority over to a woman, that is the only type of man right now that will not be, I guess, ridiculed by other women, at least the least. The least. And I say that because in this world, and I'm going to speak with no filter here. I'm going to speak with no filter, and I'm going to speak what's on my mind. I'm going to say what I've witnessed. In this world, women have the control over a man, regardless of what your traditional values, what your progressive values are. Women have control over a man. The thing is, I am one of those people that agree that a man should lead a household. However, a woman guides where a man goes depending on how she executes what she wants to be done. So women have all the control of where a household can go depending on how you move. Example, a man can lead a household. He can have the final say so. But what you whisper into his ear in the background, what you advise of him, especially if it's good advice, and what you see for your future can ultimately affect where you go into the relationship, where you go into your living space. And there's a lot of men with a lot of traditional values that are going into relationships with women who don't have traditional values or traditional morals when it comes to moving in relationships. And when they express the things that they want to do on how they want the relationship to move, they're being labeled as toxic and they're being labeled as controlling. And I'm here to kind of like give my 2 cents on it. Not clear it up because I'm not an expert. I don't speak for all men, but I have my own insight and my own way of looking at things. So first off, traditional. The aspect of being traditional. Almost nobody is traditional nowadays. Almost nobody. And it is, in my opinion, women have really twisted the aspect of chivalry. They have twisted the aspect of chivalry because the thing is, a lot of men will understand that most women are not traditional nowadays. Most men will understand that there is a different way you need to move and a different way you need to look at being in relationships with a woman in 2023. Most men understand that. However, I have noticed that most women do not understand that you cannot pick and choose and also expect for a man to conform to your exact picking and choosing. Beggars can't be choosers. So when you are in a relationship and you claim to have certain traditional values, I noticed that a lot of people tend to pick which traditional values that they hold on to and which ones they let go. And that's with men and women both. Men and women both. And now I want to focus more on the masculine side of things. So there could be a man who does old school masculine traditional things, opening the door for a lady, not allowing her to walk on the outside of the sidewalk, pays for all the dates, make sure that her woman is financially secure, is the one that provides and secures for a woman. Right now, everything that I'm saying is probably music to a woman's ears. But as soon as I say anything that has to do with the woman reciprocating the traditional values that should align with the man's, I guess, movement within a relationship, then that's when it becomes a problem. Because then a man asks for compliance, for submission, for them to understand what a man wants in a relationship and the boundaries that he sets and expects you to conform to those boundaries. And if you want to be honest, if I'm being completely honest with you, that is what comes with the package of being a traditional relationship. And most women do not like that. They don't want to be told what to do. They don't want to have a man put those boundaries on what they can wear, how they can seem on social media, what they can advertise themselves as. And it's causing a divide because you want a man to have all those beneficial traditional aspects, the aspects that make you feel good, make you feel loved, make you feel protected. But then when we hit you with the concepts of being submissive, being not necessarily a follower, but I mean, I hate to say it like that, but falling in line behind your man because he's the one that leads the image, and he's the one that leads the what people see out of that relationship. And if you don't think that your image as a couple matters in your relationship, you're dead wrong. Because I guarantee you, for both men and women, and men will attest to this, and women might deny this, but if you go out in your relationship and it's you and your lady, and you go out in public and say everyone recognizes your lady for being a smart individual woman that treats her husband well, that supports her husband, that has his back no matter what, and keeps everything in check by making sure that he's good, everyone is going to love that. No one can talk trash about it except for anyone who's hating. But like I said, if you got haters, you winning. So obviously someone's going to talk something about it, because no one's going to want to see other people succeed, because that's how haters are in this world. But when it comes to status, and when it comes to having your relationship solidified in the eyes of others, that's going to be the way to go. But if you go out with your lady and someone recognizes her from her OnlyFans, like, you know how embarrassing that is for both parties? And the woman could say, it doesn't matter, you can't touch me, or it doesn't matter, like, this isn't something that he can even come close to. You got to understand that an image of what your relationship is matters in the long run. You can't, like, okay, who was it? There was an adult entertainer. I can't remember who it was. I think it was maybe like someone like Riley Reid, or someone did a speech at Yale or something like that. It happened. Moon us. No, thank you. My posterior isn't for display. So, I appreciate the effort, but not going to happen. There was an adult entertainer that went and did like a speech for Yale, talking about how much money she made from OnlyFans and dropping out, and what she did as an entrepreneur. And no one took her seriously. And most of the people that took her seriously were other women, either doing or thinking about doing the same thing. And I love how there's a thing where women talking about how the past doesn't matter. And I love to bring this up. And for all those children, please close your ears, because I'm about to get into some nitty gritty. I've been watching a lot of videos on that. And a lot of women talk about how the past doesn't matter. And I watched a video where someone was like, okay, well, if a woman's past doesn't matter, then a man's future shouldn't matter. And the woman replied, well, you can't change the past, but you can change the future. Okay. Then the man said something very indicative of why that argument doesn't work. And I've heard this from many women before. Sexuality. A lot of women will not accept a man who has done stuff with other men, who has been bisexual, who has been, doing homosexual activities before. Not a lot of women will accept that. Some women will. There are exceptions, of course, but most women who love heterosexual men won't go for that. And it's like, if the past doesn't matter, if things like your body count doesn't matter, if things like that doesn't matter, then a woman shouldn't have a problem with a man who has done things with a man before, especially if it was for something like money. And all these videos that a woman has brought that up, where the past doesn't matter, and that example has been brought up, every woman stays quiet, because it's true. You don't want to believe that the past doesn't matter until it applies to something where you believe that the past matters. And it can't work like that. So when it comes to being in a relationship, as a man, I think that, first of all, let me say this. I believe that men are the prize in proper relationships. And the reason why I believe that is because someone said it, or Chris Rock said it the best. Beyonce could work at McDonald's and still get Jay-Z. If Jay-Z worked at McDonald's, he wouldn't get Beyonce. And that is true. That's just how the world works. That's how it works. Men and women have values that are assessed by the opposite gender in different ways. We don't see things the same. And that means not seeing things the same means that your standards and that your boundaries are not the same. You have different views. I gave you a lot of likes. Thank you. What is your name? Hallie Price. Hallie Price. Thank you. You're awesome. And that's just how it is. Women and men don't value things the same way. Toxic masculinity is a title that's been, I think, that was basically brought to fruition by feminists. I think that if it wasn't for the feminist movement, toxic masculinity wouldn't be such a common phrase. And it shouldn't be such a common phrase. And I think that toxic masculinity is used in a term when people receive a certain type of attitude or a certain type of boundaries or certain type of words that people don't want to hear, that other, especially feminists, don't want to hear. Hi, OG. I think that this whole wave of labeling men as toxic or labeling masculinity as toxic is actually very detrimental to the future of a family, of relationships, because if you keep labeling us as toxic and those women keep putting us in a certain limelight just because we're saying things that they don't want to agree with or they think is so traditional that it's misogynistic, it's not only one, a turnoff, but two, it's painting men in a bad light when it doesn't have to be that way. Men have boundaries just like women have boundaries. I like how a woman could say, I don't want anyone that's under 6 feet tall. No one bats an eye. But as soon as a man says, I don't want anyone, a woman over 180 pounds, then they get chastised about fat shaming or chastised about not being able to accept women how they are. And which is crazy to me because you can help what you weigh. You can't help how tall you are. I can't change a lot of the things that women fantasize about. So the size of your hoo-ha, you can't change that. No matter who you are, no matter what you are, you can't change that. I mean, of course you can probably with like surgeries, but there's way too much risk with that. You can't change that. You can't change your height. You can't change your skin color. You can't change my facial structure. Yeah, I mean, people get jawned on for like a lot of things that they can't help, but don't come at us with that energy of you got to be, 6 feet tall and up. You got to have, you got to be swinging. You got to have this complexion. You got to have a beard, blah, blah, blah. Because that's also genetics too. I can't grow a beard right now. I cannot. Like, no matter what I do right now, I won't be able to grow one. Maybe ever. But I know at least this goatee ain't going to connect for another couple of years. So it's like I can't help some of this stuff that girls like. But then we can name something that girls can help, such as hairstyle, how you act, how much you weigh, things like that. You can change that. But then when we say that, you want to label this as toxic because we're trying to control you. We're trying to put limitations on you. No, we're not. We're just telling you what our tastes are. If we're a traditional man and we're going to go through the roof to take care of you, you can't expect us not to accept traditional values for you yourself. Shoot, screw it. Let's accept it. Let's see what's going on. What's going on, y'all? Can you even see my face? Ha! I'm gonna remain anonymous. I'm gonna remain anonymous. Wait, who's on my team? Oh, snap. This is intense. I feel like I entered a very crazy energy filled chat. That's crazy. Damn, now I got 41. All right, yeah, we gonna lose this. That's crazy. They must have a lot of followers on their side. This ain't fun. We getting blasted right now. T3, you ain't got no followers on your side? I know I ain't got no followers on my side. Wait, I'm about to say he's got. That's crazy. Hey, that's not fair. He's literally carrying everything. Like, this man's killing the game right now. You got 3, but so does she. This man got 61, bro. This man killing us right now, bro. I ain't got none. See, y'all messed up by inviting me. I ain't gonna help nobody out. That's crazy. Yeah, we about to get blasted. We about to get blasted. Anyway, I'm gonna turn them down a little bit just so I can continue my podcast. So, all right. So I talked about treating significant others. All right. Oh, by the way, for y'all in there, I'm doing a podcast right now, so that's why I'm on TikTok Live. So while y'all beat our asses, I'ma just continue saying my little spiel to my camera. So don't mind me. Y'all can mute me if you want to, but that's what I'm gonna do. all right, cool. Nah, y'all cool. Y'all real cool. But all right, so we doing a verses again. So we talked about treating significant others. So I'm gonna talk about toxic versus normal with raising kids. That's one of the biggest issues that has come up with especially the newer generation, because a lot of people are trying to evolve the way that they treat their kids and the way they discipline their kids. So as a kid, when I grew up, I think I didn't have it as bad as my parents, but of course, I got whooped. I got disciplined physically or whatever, with of course different items, so not just a belt. But this is a very touchy subject, especially for a lot of people, because a lot of people like to practice what they call soft parenting nowadays. I have seen the pros and cons to both soft parenting and putting the belt to a kid's butt. And I'm not going to lie, soft parenting to me is not the way. Of course, I don't agree with like beating your kid. I don't agree with taking aggression out. However, I do agree that sometimes an ass whooping may be in order, especially if your kid is refusing to listen to what you're doing. No, you should never rule a household by intimidation, and you should never put your household under. And this man's in a cow. I ain't gonna lie, that had fly. That had fly. That's why he got 168 votes. This man jigging. But that's why I never believe that you should like be aggressive towards your kids. However, I do think that there's a there's a midway point between physically and mentally disciplining your kids. Also, with teaching your kids, to me, when it comes to toxic versus regular masculinity, it's like this. Toxic is teaching your kids, and especially your sons, that you should never cry. Regular masculinity is teaching your kids, especially your sons, that you shouldn't cry at everything. There's a big difference between that. There's a difference between teaching your son you should never cry and teaching your son that crying is never an option. And I think that when it comes to those certain things, you have to learn what your kids are okay with, because every child is different. You could whoop a kid like once a month and they'll be fine in the future, but there's some other kids that you could whoop once in a lifetime and it might mess them up a little bit. And I think that's your duty as a parent when they're growing up, especially in that toddler age, and they're young and they're learning the world and learning how to view you. And as a parent, I think that is the most impactful stage of your life, because that's when they learn who they can trust and how they can trust you and how they can love you. And there's going to be a kid where you can like play around, roughhouse, like play fight, throw them all over the couch, and he may love it. Or let's think about something else. You could have a daughter that loves that stuff, like you throwing her around the house and throwing her on the couch and roughhousing with her. She could love it. And you can have a son that, like, the first time you throw him up in the air and catch him, he's like freaking out and like losing his mind. And that's when you know how to gauge how you treat your kids. You're not supposed to treat all your kids the same because they're all different. They have all their personalities. If you got 4 kids, not all of them are going to react the same way to the same thing. And when you're disciplining your kids, you have to learn how to, like, at least make your kids understand and respect what's going on around them. I work at Jurassic World right now up in Atlanta, and I've seen so many bad kids fall out, bite their parents, just misbehave, do all this bull. And it's like these parents don't even want to pick their kid up off the ground, let alone like discipline. They don't, like, come on, Billy, get off the ground. Like, no, snatch your kid up, bro. Like, we don't have time to be waiting on you to let your kid fall out and have a temper tantrum on the ground. Like, it's a time thing. Like, you guys got to get going. And when raising your kids, the parent's main responsibility is to understand your child, to learn your child, and to figure out the best way to make your child as prepared for the real world as they can be. So all that soft parenting, never disciplining your child, doing nothing but putting them in timeout, especially when they know that nothing else is going to come out of it, that you're not going to take stuff away, that's not going to prepare a child for the real world, because the real world is so much crueler than that. It's so much crueler than an ass whooping. It's so much crueler than a flick on the lip. There's so much that goes on, and you need to teach them that when things happen, especially if it's something that you know is not supposed to be happening, a lot of times the kids know. The kids are smarter than they like to let on, and most parents should know that because we were kids at one point. And a lot of times when you go through those motions and when you see your kid doing things, you know how smart your kid is, you know what he knows, and he knows what the kid knows, he or she, son or daughter. And when that kid is growing and maturing, when you let that kid get away with more and more things with no consequence, they start to think that there's no consequence in the real world for their action. That's when you get people that don't know how to act in public. That's where you get people that don't know how to talk to someone with respect. You have to drill those things into that kid. And no, not most of it. Most of it does not require physical discipline. However, there are going to be moments where you're going to tell your kid what it is. The kid's not going to listen. He's going to challenge you. He or she is going to challenge you. And sometimes you might have to put hand to butt, show them a little bit of that pain and what consequence comes with those actions, because I guarantee you, if you do not do that, if you don't nip it in the bud and you don't show the kids that they have consequences to their actions, I guarantee you that what might happen to them is going to be a lot worse than an ass whooping. It's going to be a lot worse. That consequence in the future might end up costing them more harm than you could ever imagine. It might cost them their life. I've been whooped for things that at that time I didn't realize could end me in jail in the future. I forged a signature for school, and I got whooped. And lo and behold, as I got older as an adult, I realized that forging a signature on the wrong document can end me up in prison. I think that was a valuable lesson learned. I got whooped for forging a signature for school. It wasn't the biggest deal in the world, but if I learned that habit and I felt like I could get away with that habit, I'm going to take that into adulthood. I forged the wrong signature. Now I'm in prison for 5 to 10 years because I forged an illegal document that was important. And those kind of lessons are what we need to drill into our kids. And not saying that you need to beat your kid, but make sure that you understand what your kid wants and what your kid needs. Because if you just cater to only what your kid wants, your kid's going to grow up spoiled. Your kid's going to grow up not respecting you as an authoritative figure, and they're not going to respect authority when they get older. But if you give them what they need, a wake-up call, and just a little bit of pain to associate with the fact that this certain thing has consequences, then more likely than not, you're going to keep them from going down a more wrong path. The most respectful people I know have been whooped in their life. They don't think bad about being whooped. They don't look back on it and be like, oh, my parents abused me. They think, oh, yeah, I got whooped. Honestly, I should have, because I was acting a plumb fool. And it let them learn some of the things that carried into adulthood. Now, also with raising kids, I want to get into interacting in friendships. So this is for some of the other men. This is mostly for men. I'm really not talking to women at this subject, because this is like talking with your other male friends. Masculinity is a very broad subject, and when you're dealing with other male friends, there's a lot of things that you come across. I've learned that not a lot of men get taught how to love others properly, especially their friends. A lot of people get into this macho kind of testosterone battle with their friends, and they think that that's what friendship is all about. I have grown up all over the place. I was military, so I've witnessed a lot of different attitudes. Oh snap! I haven't been paying attention to my chat. They're spoiled for parents' money, older generation. I'm gonna try to decipher what you're saying. They're spoiled for parents' money, older generation. I guess he's talking about like the silver spoon kids. Them too. They need an ass whooping, a big one. All they get is a slap in the wrist and a deletion in their allowance, and then it's right back in like 2 weeks. But anyway, talking with friends, I've lived all over the world basically, and I've gotten to know many people and many types of individuals, and a lot of men don't know how to express love to their friends properly. Some men have a problem with saying "I love you" to their friends, and I think that's an issue. Because I don't think that saying "I love you" to a male friend is, I don't think it's any type of homosexual energy. I don't think it's weak energy. I don't think it's I don't think it's whack energy. It's showing that you genuinely have love for your homeboys and that you are there for them. And coming down to Georgia from Virginia was a really big shift, because I have a lot of friends up in Virginia. I have a few close friends, and I can say "I love you," no problem. They say it back. We know what that means. No other type of energy involved. We got each other's back till the day we die. Blah, blah, blah. A lot of people down here in Georgia, their way of saying "I love you" is like insulting them, or constantly like dogging on them, or making fun of them. And it's like, I made a friend here. I've talked about him on my previous podcast, Philip. Love the dude to death. And when I first talked to him, I learned how a lot of people around this area were. They like to talk trash to each other. They like to banter. They like to, talk bad about each other as a way of having fun and kikiing and all that. And I did that with Philip, and he expressed to me that he didn't like that. He didn't enjoy that. That wasn't his cup of tea. Even though he was from here, he wasn't about that. So I acted with him as I acted as a normal person, how I treat my friends, and there was no miscommunication after that. And it's just like that. Like, toxic masculinity is the inability to be, I guess, open and vulnerable with the people you're supposedly close with. You have to be vulnerable. Sometimes you got to break that down. I don't like that, like I said earlier, with raising your kids. A good way of teaching your son is that don't cry at everything, but it's okay to cry sometimes. And that's the difference between toxic and regular masculinity. Regular masculinity, you don't cry at everything, but you can cry sometimes. Toxic is don't cry at all, because then that's a whole bottled up feeling inside and ends up basically making the kid explode. And then that goes into expressing feelings. Men aren't taught to express feelings. Sad. We're taught to keep it in. We're taught to not talk about it. We're taught to, just go about our day as if nothing's happening and just keep it moving and keep them tears in and don't let nobody see any weakness. And even though I wasn't necessarily taught that, no one taught me to express my feelings. I had to learn how to do that. I'm a very emotional man. I am. And it took me a long time to get in control of my emotions. And in order to do that, I had to be real with myself. I had to sit down and I had to break down what I'm feeling, why I'm feeling this way. And I had to understand how to talk to people and how to let people know that this is how I'm feeling. So men don't know how to do that. That's also kind of clashes with relationships where women, I'm sorry, you like to have one extreme or the other. Either don't talk about your feelings, or I want you to talk about your feelings. But then when we let go, because we ain't had no one to let go to, you get the whole brunt of what we've been keeping in all this time. And then y'all don't like it. And then we're back in this cycle where it's like, you want me to talk about my feelings, but when I do, you're like, oh, it's a problem. And, that whole thing just ends up exploding. So, ladies, if you got a man, or if you're trying to get a man, please do not deny or invalidate this man's feelings, because if he tells you his feelings, that just shows you that he has a level of maturity that not a lot of other men have. And if you deny that the first time he tries to give it to you, best believe it ain't gonna happen again, and it's gonna ruin the relationship, because he's gonna keep everything inside. He ain't gonna want to tell your ass. He ain't gonna want to tell your ass, and then everything's just gonna blow up because he feels like he can't trust anybody with what's going on in here. And it's just like somebody said, there's so many hotlines for hotlines and places and online things for women's mental health, but a lot of times there's none for men. And that's the sad part of it. And a lot of times it ends up blowing up in people's faces. Before I move into the next verses, the verses thing, I gotta use the bathroom. I'm gonna take a piss. It'll take me like 30 seconds. I'm gonna be back. Oh, I don't know. I was holding that in for a fat ass minute. All right, so to the second half of my versus context, and the crazy thing is, the first one was the shorter part. So, what blinds people in relationships? This is going to be a fun one. So, I was reading a book today, and I learned about something: instinct versus learned behavior. That is one of the things that ruins a lot of relationships nowadays, because a lot of people like to ignore instinct for what they learn through their parents, through the society, through social media nowadays. What I'm about to say, not a lot of people are gonna like, especially on the women's side. And you know what? I don't apologize. Intellectual illusions. So let's talk about those. Intellectual illusions are those things that are learned behaviors that parents may teach their kids about how to move in the world and in relationships that keep you from actually realizing what your place is in a relationship. So, if we want to go back to the old school biblical days, traditional relationships have very different meanings, very different morals, and very different mechanisms as they do today. And that part isn't the issue. The part that is the issue is the fact that people today want to, this really goes back to the beginning of the podcast. People like to pick and choose what is traditional and what is not, what they want to do in a relationship and what they don't want to do. And there's nothing wrong with finding your balance of what you do and what you consider proper in a relationship. However, there is an issue with trying to combat people and saying what is allowed when you call yourself simply a traditional person. So, instinct versus learned behavior. Women and men have naturally different values, have naturally different mechanisms in how they move in relationships. And lady on my TikTok live is having a rave party. That's nice. Well, I appreciate it. And the thing is, when women and men have natural instincts when it comes to relationships, our brains are wired differently. Our brains and our bodies are wired completely differently. Yes, I believe I'm a Christian, and I believe that as humans, we have been given a different calling. We have been given a different level of sentient thought and sentient self-awareness. So there is a balance between what our instinct is and what we should be doing. Lord knows that we have instinct within us. It's sad to say that women, I'm sorry, men are wired to screw as many women as they can. It's literally a scientific fact that women have 1 to 2 eggs at most in their body. Men have millions of sperm. Every woman in the world could be populated by about maybe, I can't remember the number, but like 300, maybe it was either 300 or 3,000. Every woman in this world could be populated by 300 or 3,000 men. That's just factual. Like our sperm count versus your egg count, that's how we are genetically wired. I could populate about like maybe 0.5% of women on this earth, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but you got to remember, there's like almost 4 billion women. That's a lot of women that I could impregnate by myself. Then look at a woman and her reproductive system is not built to have many partners. It's not built to have so much sexual activity. So a lot of people like to go to the argument, why is it that when a woman sleeps with a lot of men and a man sleeps with a lot of women, that the values are different, that men are regarded as, high status when they sleep with a lot of women, and women are lower on the totem pole when it comes to sleeping with a lot of men? You have to understand, it's so much easier for a woman to get laid than it is for a man. If you don't agree with me, you're delusional. A woman could sit there and post a pic of herself on social media in lingerie, and she will have so many people ready to go at that. A man of equal attractiveness, and when I say that equal attractiveness, if you were to take all the women in the world and you were to rate this one man, and the average consensus is a 6, and you would take a woman and ask every man in the world, and the average consensus is a 6. So say that they're both 6s in the respective field. The woman will get so much more people in her DMs, people ready to tap that, than a man would. And if you believe that that's false, you're also delusional. It's the reason why men will never make as much as a woman on OnlyFans. Never. You could take a baddie on OnlyFans and she will make millions of dollars more than like the hottest stud on OnlyFans. That's just how it is. That's just how it goes. The values of women and men are completely different. A man values what a woman looks like, what her physical value is, as well as how much peace she can bring to her life. But if we're talking just physical aspects or just the initial aspects, it's the same thing like when you tell your homeboys that you went out with a date with a girl. The first question they ask is, what she look like? What she look like? Is she cute? Is she what her like? Is she curvy? Is she slim? Is she thick? Is she whatever? That's what we go for. We immediately want to say what she look like. If a woman goes out with a man and she tell her homegirls, the first thing they ask is, what does he do? How much money does he make? Like, do you see him going anywhere in the future? That's what values that we have. That is instinct. You cannot fight that. It is there. Human nature. That's what it is. And a lot of that has been ruined by the single parent household. I grew up in one. I don't think that it's always necessarily a bad environment to grow up in. However, a single parent household will never produce the amount of competent, relationship ready future adults as a dual parent household will. And that's just how it goes. It will never have the same effect. But because of the generation that we live in and the generation that people my age grew up in, that's commonplace. Single parent households are commonplace. And sad to say, especially among the black community, it's so common. It's honestly too common in my opinion. And when you're growing up in that environment, there's so many things that you learn from your parent, whoever is taking care of you. And yes, oftentimes it is a single mother. What is she's teaching you? And she's teaching, especially if she has daughters, she's teaching them that, one, you don't need a man, because obviously she's doing it without one. Two, you don't need to value men you don't need to put men on a certain pedestal. You're the prize. You do all this, blah, blah, blah. And that way of teaching has ruined the American relationship, because when you have a man that's willing to put all that away, to take care of you, to make sure that you're secure, protected, all that stuff, that is a lot of traditional value. But then you have a woman who does her own thing, doesn't want to be told what to do, doesn't need no man to do anything, won't submit to a man, because sadly, that submit word, submissive, all men want a submissive woman. But submissive is, for some reason, y'all look at it as a negative thing, like consequence. Consequence is not a negative or positive word. Consequence literally means the results of your actions. There are negative and positive consequences. However, because of how it's been used in previous generations, when you say the word consequence, people immediately think of bad. It's the same thing with submissive. People immediately think that's you giving away your right to say what you want to say. It's giving away your freedom, giving away your authority to a man. And that's not what it is at all. Because at the end of the day, a household should be led by a man. But like I said, a woman will decide where a household goes. A man leads, a woman guides. She is the support system. She is the backbone. And she whispers in the man's ear what direction they should go. And it's a man's job to interpret that, understand where she wants to go, know what is the best route to get there, and if that is the best destination to go. That's what the job is. And that's what submitting is. It's not giving away your freedom. It's basically letting someone else take charge while controlling things in the background. And women, if y'all learned how to talk to a man, if y'all learned how to really respond to a man and tell him the things that need to be done in a proper way, you would get so much more done. There's a video I saw, and it was a marriage counselor, and she was like, okay, talk to your husband, tell him what's wrong. And she was like, well, you did this, you did that, you did all this, and I know you're not doing what you're supposed to. And she was like, the counselor was like, all right, stop right there. And she literally went to the man. She said, hey, I know you're doing the best that you can, and I know that you are wanting the best for our future. And I think that as much as amazing job you're doing, I think there is a part of you that knows there's so much more you can do for your kids and teaching them what they can be. And I know that there's more that you can do for them that you haven't done yet. And that attitude, that approach will get you so much further than nagging a man. Some people think some ladies out there are gold diggers, but some of them say it's not what you got. It is. At the end of the day, there are outliers. There are women that won't put your entire value on what you have. But at the end of the day, if you look at statistics, it's much more stable when a man does have what they want. When a man does have it all together. When a man is taking the initiative to get all of the things that she wants in life, because like I said, women and men view things so differently. But turn around and be fake. Yeah. So that's what I was saying. Like, a woman can say all day, I don't care that you don't have all this money. I don't care that, I have to support you. I'm with you to the end. But a lot of times in the long run, that doesn't work. I've been in that scenario. I've been in a situation where my girlfriend had to kind of support me a little bit. And initially, when we first had the conversation, it was all fine and dandy. And she said that she was going to support me and she was going to, keep me up and help me out. And then it was supposed to be a time frame, and she agreed to that time frame. It wasn't even halfway through to the time frame when I was already getting chewed out for something that I thought we had already agreed on. And, that's just how it is. Men are not meant to be supported by a woman. A woman is meant to be supported by a man. And, that whole instinct versus learned behavior, it's what it is. You learn these things and that you think that you're going to be able to do it. But in actuality, through instinct, it just doesn't work in the relationship environment. And like I said, there are outliers. There are exceptions. There are going to be people who say, oh, that's not how my relationship is. Oh, that's not how my relationship works. And that's not how my girlfriend or boyfriend operates. And that's fine, because there's exceptions to every study out there is not without outliers. That's why outliers exist. They happen and they're there and they're always going to be there in every study. However, we're not looking at outliers. The exception does not make the rule. We are looking at what happens the majority of the time. We're looking at the average. We're looking at what statistics show us is most likely to happen. And that's what's most likely to happen. Avoiding truths, acceptance versus denial. This is also going to be a tough one for the ladies, because I have learned that it is very, very commonplace that women are allergic to accountability. It is what it is. It happens. And there's countless videos, countless examples out there that that's what happens. Because as a mature man, I say that as mature because there are some men out here that are still little kids and they can't take accountability. Like I said, exceptions don't make the rule. But most mature men are able to receive feedback, say, okay, I was wrong. Okay, I didn't do this right. And we're able to adjust. Like I said, some women are able to do that. Yes. But like I said, especially from experience, I've noticed that a lot of, especially younger and not so mature women, don't like to take accountability for the things that they say or the things that they do. And acceptance versus denial is basically one of the biggest factors of compromising in a relationship and communicating. Because when you tell somebody about themselves, when you're like, hey, let's sit down, let's have this conversation, let's figure out what's going on, and say, hey, you're doing this. No, I'm not. Hey, I would like for you to work on this. I don't think I need to work on it. I mean, I think you're tripping. Like, that right there is what I mean by acceptance versus denial. And so many people go through that. And like I said, it's not just women. Men do it too. It's just the fact that it's a lot more commonplace in women for them to shirk accountability or responsibility, and for them to place other things on someone else. And one of the biggest examples, I saw a tweet where it said reasons why men cheat, and it was like because they're crap, or because they just want to screw everything that walks. And it's like reasons why women cheat, because the men's not giving them all the attention, and because they're shirking their responsibilities as a man, and because they're not giving them what they need. And it was like, women need to start getting that from men. And it's just like, I read that and I was like, well, both are wrong. Regardless of the reason, both are wrong. If you're going to cheat on your significant other, just leave the relationship. Like, it shouldn't matter what the reason is. Don't do it. Like, leave before you get to that point. If you find yourself in a position where you're thinking of it and you're about to do it, either talk with your significant other and figure out what's going on, or leave the relationship. Like, there should be no excuse for why someone cheated on somebody. That's a choice. There are things that lead up to cheating. There are things that lead up to sex. You can't accidentally, I hate that word. Oh, I accidentally slept with him. Oh, it wasn't supposed to happen. Oh, it happened. It just happened. And I didn't know what was going on. No, come on now. He had to take your pants off. You had to lift up your butt to help him do that. And you had to let him do the things, and vice versa. You had to let her take your pants off. You had to let her do whatever God knows what happened in that bedroom or wherever you guys did it. And it's just like, cheating is a choice. Cheating should never be, it should never be verified. And not to say that people don't make mistakes and people that do cheat should be condemned. No, not at all. But understand that it's a mistake. Don't make excuses for that mistake. Don't act like there's a valid reason why it should happen, because it shouldn't have happened. Now, learn from it, move on, change, do whatever you got to do to become a better person, but don't make excuses for something that was completely your decision to do. Yeah, then they find an excuse to not talk about the problems of a relationship. Yeah, and that's one of the things about avoiding responsibility and accountability. I've told my story of how my last relationship ended a lot. And a lot of times the way I tell it, it sounds like I had no issues in the relationship. But if someone were to ask me, like, okay, well, what did you do in the relationship? I'll be upfront and honest. I'll tell them, like, what I did wrong or the things that I did that I don't think, was optimal for that relationship. However, not a lot of people can do that. Not a lot of people can open up and say, I was wrong, or this is what I did. Humans naturally selfish, good versus. Okay, so one thing that blinds people in a relationship is good versus evil. So this is a fun one because this also has some biblical implications. Good versus evil is a very learned attribute. It is very indicative of what society is deeming as proper or improper in today's world. And your definition of good and evil is going to depend on where you live, what your morals are, what your culture is, how you grew up, and all that stuff. Relationships, I'm not saying that they should be devoid of moral, but I would say that a lot of times people don't prioritize their relationships over their morality. And it sounds bad when I say that, but if you think biblically, I believe that when you marry someone, that person becomes your soul mate. You are bonded in the eyes of God in holy matrimony. You become one. That person should be more important than any single living human being on this earth, and that includes your children. And I'll be 100% honest with myself as well. I don't know if I could possibly do that. I would like to try, but as far as putting my spouse above even my children is how you're supposed to go about doing things, because that's what holy matrimony means. It's two souls becoming one, consummating that marriage, and you guys are in it for the long haul. You're not supposed to put any other human above your significant other. And that's where it comes with the good versus evil. I'm an actor and I'm a writer, so I do this with scripts as well. A lot of people don't understand that when you have a goal in life, And when you have things that you need to do, sometimes you have to have moral obstacles put in your path, where you have to figure out what is worth getting to your end goal. And I'm not going to lie to you, morals will come into play. Morals will come into play. There are going to be times where you get tried and tested about how you view society and how you view whatever values and outlooks that you have on the current world, and you have to weigh that against your relationship with your significant other. Prime example, if you were married for 10 years and your wife came in talking about, I killed someone, would you help bury the body, or would you turn your wife in? If you ask me, we partners in crime, yo. Like, I would never do that on my own. I would never kill someone, well, personally. Like, if it had nothing to do with anyone else, if it's just a personal altercation, I would never kill someone, try to hide the body, blah, blah, blah. If my wife that I love and endear and see as the absolute world and the other half and the reason why I can keep going in this life, if she had especially if it's a valid reason to take somebody out of this world, babe, we in this together. Like, I wouldn't do this by myself. I wouldn't do this on my own. I would never do this as a single person. But you my road dog. You my day one. You are the one that I'm going to die with and going to go to heaven with. And if something had to happen and someone had to be taken out and a body needs to get buried, then we ride together, we die together. And that's kind of like of course that's a very hypothetical scenario, but that's just to put in your mind what I'm talking about when I say good versus evil in relationships, and whether there is a such thing as good versus evil when it comes to your significant other. Of course, there's crazy people out there. Like, if your partner wants to go on a mass shooting excavation, like, obviously there's something really wrong with that person. But when it comes to just what you be willing to do on your own and what you be willing to do for your significant other, just know that there's a balance and there's a big gray area in that. And people should understand what takes precedent. Social versus relationship morals. So that kind of goes with good versus evil. I like to say that because social and relationship morals are completely different. The way you move with your friends are not going to be the way you move with your significant other. The way you joke, the way you act, the way you interact, the way you carry yourself is going to be completely different whether you're with your group of friends, your homeboys, or with your significant other. And understand that there needs to be a separation. There needs to be a balance. Yeah, there could be a time where your significant other is your road dog, your main one, your best friend. But if I'm going to be honest, no matter how close you get, I'm not going to act the same exact way with my girlfriend, wife, whatever, than I would with just the boys. Like, that energy is much more wild, much more untamed, uncut, just different. And there just needs to be a distinction. I feel like there needs to be a distinction. And there needs to be, when you get into a relationship, not saying that she shouldn't see that side, but she should understand that there is that side to you. And she should be comfortable with who you become around your boys. Because guarantee you, if you're in it for the long haul, there will be a moment where you are around your boys and around your girl at the same time, and something's going to slip out. And the last thing you need is to be in a position to where your spouse is sitting here like, I don't know this person. And you're like, well, this is who I am around my boys. And then now you guys are in a predicament because, like, she don't like it. And same thing with, like, your boys. Like, you could lose friends over a woman changing yourself and acting way too different and just blowing off the vibe. Like, you have to, and that's why I say, like, when you get into a relationship, your significant other should at least be able to vibe or handle the vibe of your friends and whoever you're around, because when you take someone into your life, you're taking everything with them. Their baggage, their friends, their family, especially when you get married. So, ladies and gentlemen, whenever you hang around with certain people and whenever you get in a relationship, make sure that when you are around the people that they be with, that you can rest assured that the energy is good. Because the last thing a man wants to do is get in a relationship with a woman whose friends are not only ratchet, but they're bad influences. They try to talk things into your woman's ear, because even though she's a grown woman and she can handle her own and that it's all her own decision, those influences are not healthy for your relationship. Same thing with a woman. If you get with a man and him and his boys be out partying all the time, be trying to pick up girls and holler at them, and they're trying to do that while he's in their company, yeah, that might not be a good look. I'm not gonna lie. It might be a good look. Society versus religion. What's your podcast, bro? Okay, so it's called Perks Corner on YouTube. It's called Perks Corner. Yeah, please go check it out. Subscribe. I really appreciate you sticking around, listening to me and everything. Society versus religion. This is a big one. This is a really big one. And I can make a podcast about that specific topic in itself. In the context of relationships, this is kind of tied to the learned versus instinctual behavior. Also, how you interact with relationships. When you look at the Bible, there's so many examples of how you're supposed to act as a man or as a woman, or blah, blah, blah. Society today is completely different from biblical times. And there's so much to unpack, and there's so much to compare and contrast with these two. It's almost too much, to be honest. But if you're a religious person, especially if you're a Christian like me, I haven't read up on the other, I know, monotheistic religions and seen what they're about, but I know from a Christian standpoint, there are a lot of values about being a Christian man and in a Christian relationship, and those values that I can translate today may be shunned by society, especially with some people nowadays. Because like I said earlier, I believe in submission. I believe in being the pillar for your man. But if you read the Bible, like if you really read it, when you embody those traditional aspects, you have to do it for someone that's worth those aspects. So, yes, I believe as a woman, you're supposed to submit to a man. But submit to a man that's worth submitting to. That's not going to lead you astray. That's going to take you to the promised land, so to speak, when it comes to relationships. If you have a man and he's out partying all the time, out drinking, wasting his money on God knows what, then, you know, that's not really the man you want to submit to. But if there's a man that is trying to get himself together financially, that's putting you in places that you couldn't go by yourself, and setting your future possible family up for financial stability, and trying to, you know, basically like working on his dreams and showing you that he has a work ethic that you don't find in most other people. That's the type of man that you submit to. That's what you do, because you know that he's not going to lead you on the wrong path. And if something happens, that he's got your back and that you can have his back. And man, society and religion, I think what messes people up is they try to nitpick too much. They try to take pieces that they want, and some of the pieces that don't necessarily aren't too appetizing for you, you try to leave out. And it's the same thing with religion, is that there's so many blessings and so many things that can come from being a Christian, from following Jesus in his footsteps. There's so many things, wonderful things that can happen. But you also have to sacrifice certain things. You have to have self-control. You have to watch yourself with doing things, with saying things, with acting a certain way. And those are the sacrifices that come with being a Christian. And it's the same thing with relationships. In order to achieve the highest level of relationship you can get to, you have to sacrifice certain things. Men sacrifice just as much as women do, but because of the fact that women, the traditional style of what works best in a relationship and how women act, are contradictory to what women are evolving into today. And that's just how it is. Society versus religion. Because women, y'all are becoming something different. Y'all are becoming something that isn't what we've been accustomed to. And a lot of people say that women are trying to become men, men are trying to become women. And that is honestly, there's truth to that. And there's a point that we have to get to where we realize that what is best for your relationship as a man or as a woman, and you have to find that equally yoked person. You have to find someone that has that equal value. Because me, I am fairly traditional when it comes to many things. I say that you can't pick and choose, but I'm also someone that has certain things where, yes, not everything I do is traditional, but that just means that I have to find the right person that's fit for me, the one who sees eye to eye with their values. Do not bash someone because of their views. Do not ridicule someone because of how they see things and how they believe their significant other should act. Just know that that person is not for you, and just keep it moving. Just keep it moving. If a guy wants a completely traditional woman because he is completely traditional, don't call him a misogynist. Don't call him, names. Don't try to make him to be the villain. He's not for you. And most often than not, when you're out here ranting about someone, you never had a chance with them anyway, or never looked at them like that anyway. So just keep it freaking moving. I can't stand people that give their 2 cents where they're bashing on someone or ridiculing someone. It's like, no one asked for your opinion. I didn't come on here in social media and ask, oh, hey, can anyone tell me how much of an asshole I sound like? No, just keep it moving. Person's not for you, and that's fine. And the last subject I want to get into is content versus context. Men have a very good grasp of this, and I'm not going to lie, women don't sometimes, most of the time, I would say. Content versus context. So, what you say and how you say it are very important things. Know that when you're in a relationship and when you're communicating, what you say and how you say it, those two go hand in hand. You have to say what's on your mind, but you have to know how to talk to someone. Me, I can tell you what needs to be worked on in a relationship. But if I'm cussing at you, if I'm yelling at you, if I'm calling you all types of names, calling you out your name, you're not going to listen. And I don't expect you to listen because I'm basically being an asshole. I'm not being a man. I do not have to yell at you for you to understand where I'm coming from. I have a little brother that's young enough to be my son. I don't have to yell at him. My parents kind of hate this because he does kind of listen to me a little better than he does them. But I don't have to yell at him. I don't have to raise my voice. I switch to a certain tone and I say, things in a certain way. But not ever do I yell at him? Do I scream at him? Do I cuss at him? No, because he doesn't need that. It doesn't work for him. What he understands is that tone of voice. When I put on that, I could be joking and having fun, and it's like, hey, what did I tell you? That tone shift, they can see that. It's not me raising my voice. It's not me getting an attitude, but it's me telling you right now, hey, we need to sit down. We need to have this conversation because something's not working and I want to figure it out. I want us to work. That attitude is what you need to come with. So a lot of women sometimes will focus on one or the other. They'll hear what you're saying, but they won't hear how you're saying it, or vice versa. So I have been ridiculed for not caring because I'm an optimist. I have way too much time on my hands to be down, to be depressed, to be worried about things. Something could happen today, and I'll be so sad, and I'll be hurt, and I'll be heartbroken. And tomorrow I'll walk around and but interact with everybody else as if I'm perfectly fine. And I was ridiculed for that. In high school, I had a girl that I used to talk to, and she had some mental health issues. I wanted to date her, And thankfully, my mom was like, no, you're not going to do that because of her mental state. So she forced us to break up. It was like, oh, be my girlfriend. Sure. That day I tell my mom, she's like, no, that's not happening. So I was forced to break up with her. I was very down. I was very sad and I was upset. I went to basketball practice for AAU for 2 hours, played ball, came back. I was laughing and having a good time as if nothing ever happened. I came back to school the next day, talked with my friends, walked in the hallway, had fun, and I got a text later that day that basically was calling me heartless. And like I had no heart, and that I was an asshole for laughing and kikiing with everybody while she's over here in the corner crying and hurt. And I told her, I was like, I am still hurt. You know, I still feel over this whole thing, but I do not have the capacity to stay depressed because this world is already depressing enough. This world is crazy. It's messed up. There's so much stuff that floods my mind from the news, from social media, from everything. Why would I stay depressed over something that I cannot change? Something that I cannot help? Something that doesn't need to bring me down. So yes, the context is I don't have the time to be depressed about this, so I'm going to be happy. The content is I'm still sad and still hurt about it, but I'm working on moving on and just looking to the next thing because obviously this isn't going to work out. And do not judge me, and you don't have the right to ridicule me for that. Because what I'm doing on the outside doesn't reflect what's going on the inside. And when I tell you what's going on the inside, you don't want to believe it. And it's like, that's the issue. And a lot of times that happens with women where it happened a lot with my ex. Well, I'll tell her something. And because I'm not panicking and running around all over the place and doing all these things and trying to like basically running around like a chicken with my head cut off, doesn't mean that I don't think that it's not urgent. It doesn't mean that I don't worry about it or that I'm not trying to solve it. It means that I'm not trying to put any extra external stress on myself to figure out something that needs to be done anyway. You know? So that's that content versus context. And the same thing with men. So with men, you got to learn how to do both. You can't actually, no, I say men, but this is everyone. Learn how to talk to people. And I said this earlier in the same podcast. That woman, that marriage counselor that showed that what she said was the same thing, but in a completely different context. It was done in a completely different way. It's like that sandwich. It's the sandwich method. The bun, the positive, the meat, and the insides is what needs to be worked on, and then bun another positive. Hey, I know you're doing the best that you can right now, and I appreciate all the effort. But I know that this is what you could be doing, and you could be doing so much more. And I know this is where you want your vision to go. And then top it off with just keep going, keep doing what you're doing. But I'm going to be behind you, and I'm going to give you that extra motivation to get where we both know that we want to go. I got a question about put people first before yourself. Is that toxic? All right, so putting people before yourself, it's not a toxic trait, but it can be toxic to yourself. And I say this, it sounds kind of confusing, but the thing is, putting people before yourself is a very noble and a very honorable trait, and I do that as well. However, at the end of the day, the most important person is yourself. The most important person is you. You are living your life. You're not living your life for anyone else but yourself. And yeah, it may feel like that sometimes, that you want to live for others and you want to make sure that other people are seeing you in a certain type of light. But when you are living and you're doing everything, you don't want to be a burden to others, but make sure that you are taken care of. So putting others before yourself is good when you're okay. If you are not okay, that should not be an option for you. And I say this because I've been in that position. And I'm constantly in that position where I'm putting myself before others. And it's cool. I do it all the time. It's fine. But remember, everyone's like a battery. If you continuously put out that energy and give those to others and no one's replenishing your batteries, you're going to die. And I see that metaphorically, but honestly, literally, it can kill you doing that. And when you notice your battery getting depleted, you have to either, one, cut off the energy you've been giving out, or two, make sure that the people you're giving the energy to acknowledge that you need energy sometimes as well. Because everything in relationships, no matter what it is, family, friendship, relationships, everything goes both ways. It's a two-way street. No one is an infinite battery. No one can be that. As much energy and optimism as I have had in my life, I understand now that I am not an infinite battery. I have to have someone that pours into me every now and then, just to replenish. So yes, if that's how you work and that's what makes you feel good, put people before yourself. But the moment it starts to feel like that action of putting others before you is starting to hurt your own well-being, that's when you need to pull back, cut off or pull back, and put yourself in a better position. In fact, thanks for the opinion on that. Of course, no problem. And yeah, I mean, that really gets to the end of my whole Versus podcast. I thank you, Big Country, for sticking around towards the end. I thank everyone that tuned into my podcast. Like I said, I know it's been a while. It's been quite a few weeks, maybe even months, actually, at this point, if I think about it. But it was about time that I came back on here. I just had a lot of ideas brewing, watching a lot of videos, and also had some friends going through some things this recent events, and also some things with myself. But I just like to educate where I can, and also like to help where I can. I will join every time. You're awesome. I'm not a therapist. I never act like I'm a therapist. I'm not a licensed at all. But I like to repeat to everyone that I believe that my purpose on this earth is to uplift. I'm an uplifter of spirits, of energy, of whatever. And I'm glad she asked that question. I'm glad Big Country asked that question of you putting others before yourself, because I do that a lot. And I believe that I'm on this earth to help uplift other people. But sometimes if we're constantly uplifting, who is going to uplift us? Yeah, we have Jesus and, we have God on our side, but God put people on this earth to do that for you, because as much power as he has, as much influence as he has, he's not in front of our face. And he understands that the human heart can't go just off of what we believe. We have to go off of what we can see, what we can touch, what we can have in our hands. And God puts people on this earth to do that for us so that we're not continuously losing ourselves. I just love to hear people speak facts, not fairy tales. Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's what I want to do. I don't want to sugarcoat things. I don't want to make things seem all, fairies and pixie dust, because at the end of the day, it's not. There's so many things in this world that nothing's black and white. Nothing's ever black and white. Truths are hard to hear sometimes. Otherwise, no one would lie. If truths were always pleasant to hear, no one would be a liar. No one would lie to anyone. And truths are not, sometimes truths are hard to hear, and they're hard to come to terms with. And I've done a lot of self-reflecting and learning about self-truths, and I have to be honest with myself just as much as I'm honest with other people. And I constantly have things to work on, but hey, we talking about y'all. I mean, we could have a podcast where I talk about like my insecurities, my downfalls, my bad habits, bad traits. Shoot, anyone, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, please, comment if you want one of those, just for me to dive into who I am myself and what I go through as a process, and I'm mentally bettering myself as a person. But I appreciate you, bro. Have a vice to speak it. Yeah. I think that anyone that has a good outlook on how to improve people's lives, I don't think they should stay silent, because especially nowadays, now in 2023, there's too many illusions that we live under. There's too many voice, not vice. Okay, yeah, voice. But there's too many illusions that we live behind in 2023. There's too many things that we blind ourselves with. And I mean, that's why one of my sections of today was what blinds people in a relationship, because at the end of the day, so many falsehoods and so many ideals and so many fairy tales, just like you said, blind us from seeing what the world is really like. And if we continue to blind ourselves to what the world is really like, when the truth is spoken to us, we're going to rebuke it. We're going to refute it, and we're going to refuse it. Rebuke it, refute it, refuse it. And that leads to chaos. It is what it is. But once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. This was actually so much fun. Promise I'm going to try to be better with posting regularly. I was doing really well for a minute and then fell off because I got really busy, but I'm getting back into it. Please, once again, like and subscribe, because it is free. It doesn't cost you a thing, and it helps me out. Once again, I love you guys. I hope that you stay well, stay healthy. But until next time, I'll see y'all later.